Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Kirti, Assistant Professor, Chanakya National Law University, and we are discussing the various topics under the course titled as Organizational Theory and Design. The code of this course is MMPH001, and I would suggest the students to download the e-copy of the book from eGyan Kosh and follow throughout the entire discussion with the help of the book. So we are we have completed chapter 1 or unit 1 and 2 in the last class, and today we will be covering the third and fourth unit of this entire course. So the third unit deals with organizational effectiveness. By the end of the unit you will be able to understand the concept of organizational effectiveness, different approaches to evaluate organizational effectiveness, and the limitations of evaluating the effectiveness. So the structure that the unit follows is that first of all will be discussing the introduction. Then we'll be seeing what organizational effectiveness actually means. Then we'll be moving to determinants of organizational effectiveness, and we'll see that how can we evaluate these effectiveness of the organization. And lastly, this unit will cover that how to make organization more effective. So starting with the introduction, organizational effectiveness is a very complex subject together, and it makes hard to define and diagnose or evaluate precisely. There have been many attempts to develop a general typology of characteristics of effective and ineffective organization, which has been a difficult task for the researchers. But all of them may not be equally relevant when applied to a specific situation. So, depending upon the situation, each and every organization needs a different parameter or set of variables to decide whether it is effective or not. So, the determinants of effectiveness being several, it is rather difficult to isolate them as to their precise effect on the effectiveness. Measures how organizational effectiveness, what it does. It measures the success of an organization and decides whether it has been efficient in reaching its goals. An effective organization is the one which runs smoothly and functions well in a seamless manner. If we see the meaning of effectiveness, what is effective? Then Merriam-Webster's dictionary says that is the power to produce a desired result. So, if an organization is trying to provide or produce the desired result, we can name it or we call it an effective organization. So, for example, an effective president, an effective CEO, an effective financial controller. So, if I am being a counselor here, if I do not make you understand various concepts, then my job is not up to the mark. And we can say that I'm an ineffective counselor. But if my job is done in a very appropriate manner, and then you can say that, yet she was an effective counselor. So, in this manner, we use the term effective and effectiveness. So, it is difficult to define an effectiveness with reference to the organization because there can be several parameters, and judging or comparing one parameter with another becomes a difficult task. So, organizations can be successful on various measures, but we have to understand that which measure to be considered at what time or what situation. Okay. So, effectiveness of an organization depends on very many factors, as we have discussed in the last slide. To take, for instance, mission, goals, internal efficiency, positioning of the product or the organization, and many other factors can be the example of the effectiveness. It also depends on the tangible positive impact of the organization and its efforts on shareholders, their users, and the employees or the entire organizational internal environment. So it depends upon the organizational conflict like on accomplishment of the goals, satisfying their customers and stakeholders, and enough with enough resources to operate and make an impact on the society or the environment. So, organizational effectiveness is the degree to which the organization achieves the goals it sets out to achieve. And these goals can be a certain output or productivity or the service quality, efficiency goals it sets out for. But it can also be the degree to which its internal processes are aligned. And looking forward, it can be the degree to which it has secured the resources required to create a competitive advantage in the market. So, organizational effectiveness does not confine itself or it's not limited to the degree to which only the organizations achieve its goal. It can also be in terms of the capturing market share, then having an impact on the targeted customers, then degree to which it has secured its resources. So there can be various variables or parameters on the basis of which we can say an organization is effective or not, depending upon the degree. Okay, so here there are different models which can lead us to identify the effectiveness of the organization. There are different models. Suppose the first model here is given the goal model. So when we compare the set goals as the parameter to judge the effectiveness of the organization, that what kind of output or productivity level it has achieved, then it means that we are following a goal model. So it means the accomplishing its goals and measures the output and does not provide the information regarding the resources or internal processes or the system or the processes which is happening or taking place in the organization. So the gold model. Then the second one is internal process model. Internal process model means that high quality internal processes are there in the organization and they can be evaluated to call the organization whether effective or ineffective. So the model does not look out at the outcome, but it depends upon the internal process and its success in the organization. So whenever we are taking internal process model into consideration while deciding the effectiveness of the organization, we assess the effectiveness on the smooth functioning of organizational operations and its various practices. This is achieved based on the information provided in the document, that is documentation and continuous consolidation. This model focuses more on efficiency rather than effectiveness. Efficiency means in Hindi we can say कि कितने कुशल हैं आप. अगर किसी काम को करने में आपकी कुशलता है, that means you are efficient. Okay, so effectiveness and efficiency both are a different thing, and we can judge someone's performance and say whether they are efficient or not, or whether they are effective or not. Okay, so if you are providing the desired outcome, you are being called as effective, and if you are good at providing that result, good enough, how good you are, then you are being called as efficient. Okay, so the focus is more on internal processes rather than other outcomes. Input and processes are adopted by the organization, and they are the key results area where the entire assessment is done as per this model. Okay, so the another or third model through which we can assess the effectiveness of the organization is resource based model. Means obtaining desired resources needed for high performances and look at the achievement of competitive advantage depending on the resources which are valuable and rare to copy. So if we have the resources with us or the products are effective, which is resource model. For example, Apple iPhone, Microsoft Windows, Google, WhatsApp. So they are not that difficult to copy, but they are the market leaders. Building these resources help the organization to be more unique, and by unique, organization become very effective. Another model is strategic constituency model. So it means satisfying strategic constituencies that hold way over the other organization. Effectiveness is measured how far it satisfies the prevailing environment and the competitiveness in the market. So, if your strategy is such a good strategy which leads you to have a competitive advantage over over your competitors, then your organization can be termed as an effective organization as per this model. So the another model is stakeholder model. It means satisfying the needs and wants and expectations of the stakeholders of the organization. So who are these stakeholders? Many people could have this opinion that yes, the people having share of the company are the ones who are called as stakeholders. But here, employees, customers, internal customers, suppliers, and mediators, market intermediaries, all can be stakeholders of your organization. So, calling a shareholder your stakeholder would be a narrowed perspective. So, taking broader perspective, stakeholder model states that creating an edge over your competitors and satisfying your all these agents of stakeholders, and this model is one of the best models of organizational effectiveness because it takes into consideration various agents and tries to satisfy all of them. Then another model to evaluate the effectiveness of the business organization is competing values model. It suggests the presence of simultaneously opposites based on the Cameron and Quinn's framework. For example, the organization wants to satisfy its customer. At the same time, it tries to satisfy its own profit needs and wealth maximization needs. So it also takes care of the employees as well as focuses on initiatives and innovations that could give it an edge over its competitors. So the model ensures the effectiveness based on the reconciliation of these competing values. On one side, looking out for the internal customer, and the other side, looking out for the external customers. So creating a balance between these competing ends or agents is what this model suggests. So we can view it as a model which is related to the contrast in your opinion in the within the organizational environment, and thus acts as a model to evaluate the effectiveness. Then the last one here is abundance model. It means flourishing and virtuousness. So, model proposes that the effectiveness depends on realizing highest potential on human system in the organization, meaning thereby it considers that the resources are in abundance and the potentiality they have, the committing competences they have, skills they have, they can be developed and we can have an abundance. So if the resources are such that they are rich in nature with high quality skills and competencies, then those resources could be evaluated to come to the conclusion whether that organization is an effective one or an ineffective one. Now now the other section of this entire uh, unit is determinants of organizational effectiveness. So Likert is a very renowned a researcher in the field of psychological research and behavioral research and the overall management studies. Then his name is Rezen Slickert, and he identified three variables useful for discussing the effectiveness over time. So, casual variables first, and then intervening variables, and then end result variables or output variables. So these three variables are there on the basis of which we can evaluate, or which are the most determining factor for any organization to succeed in the market and to be called as effective one. So casual variables, factors which influence the course of development within an organization. Intervening variable are those factors which represent the internal state of the organization. Then end results are the variable that show or reflect the results, accomplishment, or failure of the organization. Here we see that organizational structure, technology, corporate philosophy of the organization, and management, top level management, then objective of the organization, policies, procedure, the leadership style, the leadership strategy or management style are the various sub variables or factors which contribute to the casual variables in the organization. Then another variable according to Likert is commitment to objectives, morale and motivation, communication of the organizational employees, then problem solving approach, then decision making process, and the style of the employees. So these are the intervening variables that depend upon the casual variable. And the casual variable as well intervening variables together give us the output variables, and due to the interdependency and interaction of these two classes of variables lead to the output variable. What can be the output variables? Now the production, the profit, cost, sales, industrial conflict or its resolution, then accidents, turnover, absenteeism. These are the negative output, of course, but positive outputs are also there, like production, sales, cost, and profit. But the variable is going to be the uh, combination of all these sub variables or sub factors. Okay, so this is the model suggested or adopted by Resins Likert and in his study of human organization. And this model helps you to understand what is the interlinkage between the casual variable, intervening variable, and output variable. So these variables are the determining factors on which the organizational effectiveness depends. So if these single sub variables or single most factors are being taken into consideration and performed or looked after in the best possible way, it would lead to overall organizational effectiveness in turn. So, how are we going to evaluate this effectiveness? So, Kim Cameron argues that there can be no perfect evaluation for the entire effectiveness of the organization. But he also suggests that there can be a set of questions which can be taken into consideration when we are trying to evaluate the effectiveness of any organization. So, this entire evaluation process can be an improved one by the help of following certain set of questions. For example, here are six basic questions that Kim has suggested. First one is, what domain of activity should be the focus of the entire evaluation? Then the perspective of the or which the constituencies point of view should be considered while doing the evaluation. Then what level of analysis should be used? Then what time factor should be employed while evaluating? Whether the process would be intermittent or a regular one or done a periodical way. What type of data should be used? Whether first-hand data, second-hand data, or different type of research methods are there. Which method could be applied to get the desired type of data? So this can be also one particular or typical question when it comes to evaluating the effectiveness, and what referent or approach should be employed. What approach should we take to evaluate the entire effectiveness of the organization? So these are the six basic questions depending upon which we can design our evaluation process for deciding the effectiveness or effectiveness of the organization. Then how to make any organization effective? There should be certain standard, there should be certain functions which we could follow, or principle which we could follow to come to the conclusion that yes, we have acted in a positive direction to help the organization become an effective one. Okay. So people practices, the core first one is how people practices are being done at the organization. So human resource development work functions like recruitment, selection, learning and development, reward and recognition, and career planning will help employee to strengthen their capabilities. So if the employees are taken care of and their competencies and capabilities are enhanced and taken into consideration or focused upon, then it could lead to the organization towards the effectiveness. So people practices, which means the practices or functions related to taking care of people, employee of the organization, organizations can be led to the effectiveness. Then workforce capabilities, as we have suggested or discussed during the people practices here, by increasing the capabilities of employees, not only just taking the care of recruitment and selection and retiring them and rewarding or recognizing them, but enhancing their capabilities on a day-to-day basis and motivating them to perform well, giving them certain standard or communicating them clearly what the procedure should be and what is their expected outcome of the performances, will help the organization achieve its goals and thereby making it an effective one or increasing its effectiveness. So the another way to make the organizations effective is workforce capabilities. Then key performance drivers or areas. So HRD department or human resource management department should build resources and capabilities in such a way that the organization has competitive advantage over its competitors. This will help the organization by having the high performance culture within the organization. So if there are certain key performance drivers, and organization or human resource department recognizes them and tries to be effective in those key driving areas or key performance drivers, then eventually this will lead to organizational effectiveness. Then efficient process and the efficiency of the organization. Now efficiency of the process means the internal processes are being or conducted smoothly and they operate in a seamless manner, which helps in sustaining the continuity in the business with low absenteeism or turnover. By having best people practices and best uh, workforce capabilities, we can analyze or we can have a competitive position in the market, and this would lead the organization in having the good culture, and the competencies of the employees will get strengthened, and in turn the organization will reach to its effectiveness with the help of achieving different goals and objectives that has been set. Okay. Then product and service output. So ultimately the goal of the organization and each and every effort taken by the human resources is towards the direction of having a desired product quality and service output. So the organizations should make certain policies which benefit the end customer by building good internal culture, internal value system, rewarding the employees and evaluating their performances, and thus leading to the better product and service quality. So if the product and service quality are being focused upon and steps are taken, then the organization could be an effective one in the long run. Another perspective to make the organizations effective is organizational objectives. It Organizational objective should be the one which is very clear, identifiable, achievable, clearly communicated to the organizational employees and stakeholders, and should be such that it adds certain values to the society. and helps to reach the return on invested capital, m- achieve market growth and capital efficiency. This also helps in creating value among the stakeholders. So, organizational objectives should be chalked out, should be planned in such a manner that it leads to overall organizational effectiveness. Then, how to make organizations effective in a strategic manner? Other strategies to help organization achieve its effectiveness are making use of human resources, focus on education and growth, keep the customers in mind while planning other activities and various other strategies, then work on quality of the services, proper utilization of advanced technology or better technology. So these are the other strategy which will help the organizations to reach its effective position in the market. Now, coming to the end of this entire unit, we have studied how organizations can be termed as an effective one, and how we can evaluate it, and how we can reach to the organization effectiveness in the perfect sense. Now, another unit which we are discussing here today is fundamentals of organizational structure. So, organization is a set of people, is a set of agents, various agents who have their own motive and objectives. When they come together, they try to achieve a common goal or objective. So, here we will try to understand the meaning of organizational design and restructuring, why there is a need. Then, the entire evolutionary process of an organizational design. Then, another thing which we are going to understand in this chapter or unit is the universal perspective of the new perspective of organizational design. Then, how we can restructure the strategies we will learn by the end of this entire unit. The fundamentals of organizational structure. The title of this unit does, and this is the structure that we are going to follow throughout this entire unit. We'll be discussing the background of this entire organizational structure front, and then we'll see how can we design, what is the process to be taken while designing an organizational structure. Then how this evaluation, this organizational design process has evolved. Then what can be the various perspective throughout the globe for designing an organization, and how we have moved from strategy structure to the process of the organizational design, the new perspective on or modernistic view of organizational designing process, then restructuring strategies. So, starting with the background of the organizational structure and design, Burton and Thakur have, in their study during 1995, have defined organizational design as a total pattern of structural elements and patterns used to manage the overall organization. Now, organizational design should be seen as a tool for implementing the organizational strategies and the attainment of overall organizational goals. Now, another study has suggested that the structure of an organization means analyzing the following things: how an organization is put together, who reports to whom, the degree of centralization or decentralization, or the decision making power concentrated at top, or it has been distributed overall the hierarchy, then the extent of the rule and policies, regulation and procedure in any organization. Okay, so these are the various means, or these are the various fronts which we can analyze to come to the conclusion that how an organization structure is designed. Okay, so by Allen there are 7-step process to have a entire design of the organizational structure. So first we need to identify the major objective of the firm, drive the primary line functions needed to accomplish those objectives. Whenever there is any type of planning, any type of management function, we first try to define or chalk out the various objectives of conducting that particular process. So the second step here is to organize from top down by establishing a scalar chain of authority and responsibility. Here it is written change, which should be scalar chain. Then the third one is organizing from the bottom up by integrating the activities of each function. Whatever positions or authorities we have assigned to the job position, first it will come from top to down, the chain of command, and then the relationship of responsibility from bottom to going upward. Then fourth step is to decide what more management positions are needed for each activity. So the set of activities are there, several different departments are to be planned, and then we see what can be the management, what type of management positions should be there to supervise those activities. Then identify positions in group related work, team related work. Like there should be a the activities related to human resource management should be clubbed together and called as human resource department. Activities done for research and designing process should be done in a separate department, and that can be termed as uh, research and development department. Now, seek groupings of to ensure balance in the distribution of resources. So, whatever resources we have to distribute it, organize it in such a manner that each department gets an equal share of the resources that they require. Check whether the span of control are appropriate or not. So this is the entire process which we can follow to have an organizational culture after the conception of the organization, or help us to design the entire organizational structure. Now we come to the evolutionary process of organization design, where it started. So every organization, as we have discussed in our first and second unit in yesterday's class, we've seen that organization can be also understood using the metaphor like brain and organism, and then as a system, then as a process. So here, as a business organization is also an organism, it also has different life stages. So it evaluate its evolutionary process should be studied to understand what are the different phases in an organizational growth and its life. So here, Burton and Thakur gave a study, and they have come to the conclusion that entire organizational life cycle can be divided into four different stages. First one is the birth stage, then the second one is youth stage, middle stage, and maturity stage. Now, talking about the birth stage, when the organization is created, in its conception phase, the organizational decisions making is highly centralized. At the time of its conception or its creation, we cannot give entire, or we cannot go for decentralization and distribute the power of taking the decisions. It can go wrong. So the decision making power is highly concentrated at the top level. An organization is more or less an informal one than being a very formal one. So once it has been in its conception or its creation phase, we see or we have this observation that the organization can be an informal one. And the formal structure comes after the designing it and defining various subjects or various processes as per the design process. Okay, so there are usually few rules and regulations. No professional staff or no internal system for planning can happen, can be there. Then comes the youth stage. Yes, organization has come into being, it has been registered, a proper department or functions have been assigned, a clear cut picture of the entire structure may not be there, but it would have evolved from that stage to another stage, that is youth stage. Now additional employees are being hired as the sales of the company's product and services has increased in the market. Authority is fairly centralized again, but a few trusted employees are involved in the process of decision making. Then some informal rules and procedures are still there. There are there are now a few professionals also and administrative personnel in the organization, and the decision of labor begins to occur at the newly formed departments are assigned tasks. So the now organization has certain departments as well in its youth stage. It has involved certain professionals, it has hired some new employees. It knows that it has captured the market in such a way that it can survive the another phase. Then comes the middle stage. By the time organization has reached the middle stage, it has become somewhat successful and has grown its size. Its structure is similar to that of a formal bureaucracy with formalized departments, supporting staff, formal structure, departments with many professional clerical staffs, and a large set of rules and procedures to guide their behavior, to guide their day to day performances have been introduced. Then the authority system has become very effective. The centralized decision making system has been decentralized and division of labor has become extensive at this stage. So organization has reached to a level of middle stage. Now the another or the final stage of the organizational evolution process in the organizational design is maturity stage. In this stage, the organization has become very large and mechanistic. There has been a set of bureaucratic rules, regulations, and policies prevailing. Then decision making is centralized here because it has reached the stage where taking a wrong decision can lead to a detrimental effect on the overall organization and its environment. Then the division of labor is highly refined, that who is to perform which function. Then as a result of rigid virtual hierarchy, the organization on the brink of stagnation. At this stage, organization attempts to revive itself, become innovative and flexible. If decentralized authority within the lateral framework, such as licensing person and task forces and project teams are there, it tries to achieve another to go to another phase or tries to achieve a high level of performance in the market. Thus, it is clear that the organization's structural characteristics undergo different stages of organizational life cycle. So, this is how we can see an organization taking birth to going to the maturity stage where it demands intervention and regular innovation and coming up with the creative ideas to revive it, to break down its stagnation position and again gain a popularity in the market. So it needs certain fresh outlook, fresh perspective, redesigning of product. Various marketing mix can be used to redesign its perspective and redefine its objective and come out of this stagnation phase or maturity phase and again become a market leader. So it has already gained a defined position in the market, but it needs certain fresh ideas or outlook to further move to capture more market share. Then universal perspectives of the organizational design. There can be three perspectives to view how an organization structures it is designed. First is the bureaucratic model, then we have the behavioral model, and then we have the contingency perspective of organizational design. Let's look at it one by one. So first is bureaucratic model, given by Max Weber, who was a German sociologist, conceptualized the idea of bureaucracy Eventually, it led or it emphasized that central to his work of the development of the concept of bureaucratic organizational design. It is defined that the organization founded on a legitimate and formal system of authority. The approach held that an ideal organization should have the following characteristics. What those characteristics are? There should be a division of labor on functional specialization. Now, what this division of labor means? This division of labor means everybody gets their assigned tasks and duties, and they know what boundaries they have, professional boundaries they have. Each and every work is divided in such a way that everybody knows who to report and how to work and what they are supposed to do. The marketing team knows that they have to perform only the task and duties related to the marketing effort. Human resource team or department knows that they have to perform the functions related to the human resources and managing them. So division of labor should be there, and it has also been there in the Henry's 40, Henry Fayol's 14 principles of management, which we have discussed in the last class. Then a well-defined hierarchy of the authority so that the scalar chain of command runs from top to bottom. A system of rules covering the rights and duties of the employee. So bureaucratic system seems a very organized one, very rigid one, and very uh, detailed system is there so that everybody knows what to do, and a system of rules that covers the rights and duties. Procedures to deal with the work and different work situations should be there. What are the various mechanisms to tackle or handle the challenges faced on a day-to-day basis. Then the promotion and selection based on technical competencies and impersonality of interpersonal relationships. All managers should conduct business in an impersonal manner. No personal grudges or no personal motive should be involved in conducting the overall business procedures. Then maintaining an appropriate social distance from their subordinates, that yes, if I'm a manager, the subordinate cannot be my friend, cannot come and talk to me in an informal way. So the distance should be there as per the bureaucratic model. So it still lacks certain human touch of or human relations touch in its approach. Then came the behavioral model, which yes adds up to the bureaucratic model and adds up a little bit of human touch or human relation touch and considers human aspect while conducting the business operations. So has evolved from the human relations school of management thought, which we have discussed in the last two units as well. In the classical bureaucratic model, an individual is not identified and the effect of an entire group is considered in total process of management. On the contrary of the classical bureaucratic model, this model suggests that the performances of the organization is believed to depend upon the human beings and their behavior. So the characteristics and mutual relationships emerging from work patterns and organizational setting should be the focus of the management. Now, important factors which play significant role are needs, motivation, attitude, personality, perception, leadership quality, group behavior, responsibility, and authority relationship. Communication flow are the basic elements or factors which were considered in this model, and thus it helps to design the entire organizational structure. Then, social technical system theory, universal perspective of organizational design we are discussing. So here one more approach is being added, and that is socio-technical system theory, and it was developed by Trist and Bamforth. Throughout their study, with the help of it, they came with the alternative methods of coal mining. And Rice and his colleague, through their research at England's Tavistock Institute, they come to the conclusion that socio-technical approach is based on the need to balance the organizational human side with the technical and mechanical side. And such, this theory focuses on two systems. One is the social system, that yes, people come from society, they have their behavioral side, they have their motivation, their attitude, their perception, their um, totality of personality, and that provides the framework for all human interactions and helps to understand that both formal and informal organization exist in the organization, and we cannot go away or do away with the informal group settings or group communication or informal organization forming in the within the organization. Then the second focus was on the technical system, and it provided the framework of tasks that produces organization goods and services. So the shift from strategy procedure to process, which was the new perspective on organizational design, can be seen that Bartlett and Ghoshal considered the study on strategy structure relationship by Chandler. Another names associated with this particular perspective, which is from strategy structure to the process, are Stockford and Wells, Daniel Spitz and Tretter, and another names are there. And these are the first generation approaches to organizational design. They realize that organizational design is the complexity and dynamic nature of environmental demands has made the structural fit, which is called strategy and structure linkage, less relevant and harder to achieve. They also realize that coupled with this, there has been a growing realization that just focusing on organizational structure may not enough to compete in the complex strategy concerns of the organization. Therefore, apart from the first generation, a second generation of model of organizational design has been developed with focus on the management processes that will make strategic decision work. So the second generation model are based on the premises that all the structure for forms are not equally effective in implementing a given strategy, and therefore the role of management is to create such consistent and balanced design which could meet its overall strategy. So design parameter for second generation organizational design models are, in order to create the organizational design internally consistent and balanced one, the following design parameter can be used, like structural and formal coordination mechanism, then system and tools, that is like administrative mechanism, and cultural transformation, that is socialism, normative and integration. So structural and formal coordination mechanism, what can they be? The second the second generation of organizational design, and this school of thought has suggested this first mechanism, which is structural and formal coordination mechanism. This includes centralization, formalization, and specialization. What is centralization? We have discussed in the past few slides as well. So it refers to the power of decision making lying in few hands at the upper or lower level of chain of command. Then formalization, which is also known as standardization, it indicates the extent to which policies, rules, job description, etc. are written down. So everything is in a written form, procedures are established through standard routines, and there is a formal procedure to be followed for each and every task, each and every function to be done or in that particular organization. So design should be such that the degree of specialization is there. What it means? It refers to the number of specific tasks that are carried out through separate and distinct functions. Okay. Then comes the second approach in this strategy structure to process, the second generation of organizational design is systems and tools, that is administrative mechanisms. So the coordination mechanisms mentioned above will need to be supported and supplemented by various system and tools, also called the administrative mechanism. Now, administrative mechanisms are data management mechanisms, managers management mechanisms, conflict resolution mechanism. So, different set of mechanisms are there, and they are the tools for performing the task and operating on a day-to-day basis. And data management mechanisms are there for storing the information, which is information system, measurement system, resource allocation procedure, what comes in and what goes out, how to stock the inventories, how to get the supplies needed, then how to supply the manufactured goods, or how to let the services reach the consumers. So these are the allocation of procedures of resources, and various measurement system, information system should be there as per the data mechanism, data management mechanisms. So it is part of system and tools, mechanisms, or the strategy of the organizational design. Then managers management system, choice of key managers, career path, reward, punishment system, compensation scheme, management development programs, patterns of socialism. Then conflict resolution mechanism includes coordination, committees and task forces, issues resolution system and processes. So these are all part of structure, system and tools mechanism. Then the third one is cultural transformation strategy. So in order to deal with all these diversity and complexities involved in managing an organization effectively, the socialization of managers in key position is crucial. This theory or this particular style of designing the organization structure has realized then the managers have to internalize certain values so as to be in a position to be more strategic choices, then and operational decisions that are in line with the mission goal of the company and with the relevant values of the company. Now the socialization can be facilitated. How? The socialization can be facilitated among the employees of the organization with the help of job rotation. In banks you would have seen that at one day one person is sitting at the may I help you desk, and the another day in another month if you visit there, that person would be sitting at the teller's counter. Why is that? It is it is to make them acquainted with all the processes being done at a branch. So this is an example of job rotation. So regular transfer of people from one state to another or one city to another to socialize them with the organization in the internal organizational environment. Management development programs are another tools for socializing the employees, and in this way we can have an organizational design that the design and structure is so flexible that employees are getting chance to socialize with each other and socialize in the internal environment, and these are the various tools to make them socialize and feel belonged. So building up an internal network through management development programs in another tool, then international conferences and forums to facilitate international and inter-unit transfer of knowledge and learning and task force, and thus helping the organizational employees to communicate with others, face others, come out of their shell and hesitation, and in thus way encourage the informal communication channel in the organization. So we see the shift from being a bureaucratic view or approach where there was uh, lesser scope for the human interaction, and management and the employees were kept apart, and there was a notion that manager should not be a friend of the employees. So we are seeing the shift from a bureaucratic perspective to the strategy structure to process strategy of designing the organizational structure. Then restructuring strategy, what can they be? Okay. So, an analysis of empirical studies on the relationship between organization, development strategies and structure indicates that there is a pattern in relationship between the two. Now, in the last section, we have discussed strategy, structure to process. So these two have an interrelationship. And after the studies and analysis of the various research that has been conducted in the second generation of organizational design view, we have come to the conclusion that the summary of relationship between strategy of organizational development and structure can be studied, and the pattern should be very clear. So here we are about to view certain strategies of organizational development and structural changes that are often assumed to be the outcome. So the first strategy of organizational development discussed here is organizational growth. Growth to be referred here as the size of the operation. So increased vertical diversification is the outcome of this strategy. So if the strategy is based upon organizational development, it would lead to the change in overall organizational design, overall process. So if the organizational strategy here is to have a growth, how it will be done? It will be done with the outcome, which is increased differentiation, strengthening or lengthening the hierarchies, growing the number of employees or the jobs and the department. Then horizontal diversification and rising formalization, increased delegation, possible economies of scale. Okay. Then growth via diversification can be another strategy when organization is trying to redesign itself or restructure itself. Then increased specialization of skill and function, divisionalization of major subunits, rising formalization, especially of planning and resources allocation and procedure, increased delegation can be there. Then technological development can be another strategy to have a restructure in the organizational design. Then acquiring a secure domain through non-competitive means, especially joint programs, can be another strategy for restructuring the organizational design. Then improving the managerial techniques with a view to enhance the flexibility of overall the organization, which will depend on the methods adopted, but usually associated with this establishing of new uh, specialized roles. So these are the various strategies through which we can restructure our organizational design. And the outcome of it can be establishment of new roles, development on methods and establishment, then job increasement of job roles, divisionalization. So these are the various changes we'll see as an outcome of these strategies being taken for restructuring the organizational design. So here with these discussion, we come to the conclusion of the unit 4, and we'll be discussing our unit 5 and 6 and further units in our next classes. And thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you've understood the concepts related to these two units, and have a great day. Thank you.